What if I told you that one of the most famous prison escapes in history didn't involve a tunnel, a helicopter, or a violent prison riot? What if a prisoner escaped from one of India's most secure prisons using nothing more than a box of sweets? It sounds impossible, but in 1986, that's exactly what happened. A dangerous criminal sat behind bars, surrounded by walls, guards, locked gates, and security checkpoints. Escaping should have been impossible. Yet within hours, prison officers would be unconscious, security would collapse, and one of the most notorious inmates in the world would simply walk away. The man's name was Charles Sobhraj. And this is the unbelievable true story of how a prison birthday celebration turned into a national embarrassment. By 1986, Charles Sobhraj was already well known to law enforcement agencies across Asia. Authorities connected him to numerous crimes, and his reputation as a manipulative and deceptive criminal had spread far beyond India's borders. Now locked inside Tihar Jail in New Delhi, he was exactly where authorities wanted him, behind bars. Tihar Jail was not an easy place to escape from. High walls surrounded the facility. Armed guards monitored inmates around the clock. Strict security procedures controlled every movement inside the prison. For most prisoners, escape was just a fantasy. But Charles Sobhraj wasn't like most prisoners. Instead of focusing on walls and fences, he focused on people. Over time, he observed routines. He learned who worked where. He watched how guards interacted with inmates. Most importantly, he studied human behavior. Because sometimes the weakest part of a prison isn't the concrete. It's trust. Months passed. Then one day, an unusual opportunity appeared. Sobhraj announced that he wanted to celebrate his birthday. Nothing about that sounded dangerous. In fact, it sounded harmless. A prisoner wanting to share sweets with staff and inmates seemed like a friendly gesture. Some guards reportedly saw it as a sign that he was behaving well inside the prison. But beneath that simple birthday celebration was a plan. A very dangerous plan. Boxes of sweets were prepared and distributed throughout the prison. Guards accepted them. Staff members accepted them. Nobody suspected that something was terribly wrong. At first, everything seemed normal. People laughed. Conversations continued. The prison operated as it always had. Then the strange symptoms began. Some guards felt dizzy. Others became unusually tired. A few struggled to stay awake. Nobody immediately connected the dots. But within a short time, more and more prison personnel were experiencing the same problem. Something wasn't right. And by the time officials realized what was happening, it was already too late. The sweets had allegedly been mixed with sedatives. The prison security wasn't being attacked from the outside. It was quietly collapsing from the inside. Before we reveal what happened next, make sure to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications for more unbelievable true crime stories and prison escape cases from around the world. Because what happened after those guards lost consciousness shocked an entire nation. As confusion spread through Tihar Jail, Charles Sobhraj watched carefully. The moment he had been waiting for was finally here. Security was weakening. Guards were becoming incapacitated. And somewhere inside one of India's most secure prisons, a convicted criminal was preparing to make his move. The question was no longer whether the plan would begin. The question was whether anyone would stop it before it was too late. And as darkness started to fall over Tihar Jail, Charles Sobhraj took his first step toward freedom. A step that would trigger one of the most infamous prison escapes in modern history. As guards struggled to stay conscious and confusion spread throughout Tihar Jail, Charles Sobhraj knew his opportunity had arrived. The prison's security system had been thrown into chaos. Officers who should have been monitoring inmates were suddenly unable to perform their duties. Communication broke down. Questions were being asked, but answers were coming too slowly. For a brief moment, one of the most secure prisons in India became vulnerable. And Charles Sobhraj intended to take full advantage of it. Reports later revealed that numerous prison staff members had been affected by the drugged sweets. Some lost consciousness entirely. Others were too disoriented to react effectively. The carefully planned deception had worked. As the situation unfolded, Sobhraj and several other inmates moved through the prison. No dramatic explosions. No gunfire. No violent confrontation. Just confusion. And in the middle of that confusion, a prisoner who should have been locked away was making his escape. Imagine being a prison official arriving at work and discovering that inmates were missing, guards had been drugged, and security had completely failed. That nightmare was becoming reality. Somewhere beyond the prison walls, Charles Sobhraj was now free. For prison authorities, the realization hit like a thunderbolt. A massive manhunt began almost immediately. Police agencies were alerted. Roadblocks were established. Investigators rushed to determine exactly what had happened inside Tihar Jail. The escape quickly became national news. People across India were stunned. How could someone simply walk out of one of the country's most secure prisons? How had so many warning signs been missed? And perhaps most importantly, where was Charles Sobhraj now? As authorities searched, intense scrutiny fell upon the prison itself. Officials launched investigations. Questions were raised about security procedures. Prison staff faced examination regarding how such a shocking failure had occurred. The embarrassment was enormous. A prison designed to keep dangerous criminals locked away had become the scene of one of the most notorious escapes in modern history. But freedom would not last forever. Authorities continued their search, determined to bring the escaped prisoner back into custody. Days passed. Then the breakthrough finally came. Charles Sobhraj was eventually located and arrested again. His escape had succeeded temporarily, but it did not result in permanent freedom. The manhunt was over. The fugitive was back in custody. And the prison escape that had stunned the world came to an end. Yet the story left behind important lessons. The escape did not happen because prison walls were too low. It did not happen because security gates were too weak. It happened because trust was exploited. A simple act that appeared harmless, a birthday celebration with sweets, became the key to defeating layers of security that should have been impossible to overcome. Even decades later, the 1986 Tihar Jail escape remains one of the most talked about prison breaks ever recorded. Not because it was violent. Not because it involved sophisticated technology. But because it revealed how quickly security can fail when people let their guard down. And that's what makes this case so unsettling. The greatest threat wasn't outside the prison walls. It was already inside, waiting patiently for the perfect moment to strike. And with nothing more than a box of sweets, one of the most infamous prison escapes in history was set into motion. Please like, comment, share, and subscribe. Thank you.